I am Amélie Dubois, 24 years old, and I grew up in a Haussmann apartment in the 16th arrondissement of Paris, where the Seine glittered like broken glass and the sound of church bells marked time I wished would pass faster. To outsiders, my family embodied Parisian elegance and intellectual sophistication. My father, Philippe Dubois, was a renowned psychiatrist with a private practice near the Champs-Élysées. My mother, Isabelle, curated exhibitions at the Musée d'Orsay, her heels clicking through marble halls like a metronome of refinement. But behind those ornate moldings and silk curtains, our home was a beautiful prison where reality bent to suit their needs. I used to sit on my narrow balcony, counting the tourists below and planning my escape. Even as a child, I knew I was losing my mind, or they were stealing it from me. My family weren't just cold. They were architects of alternate realities, and I was their unwilling subject. I still remember my 18th birthday perfectly, sitting alone in our salon while my parents attended a gallery opening, only to receive a note slipped under my door.
Joyeux anniversaire, ma chérie.
Your medication is on the kitchen counter. Don't forget. Maman. The pills were there, white and innocent-looking, but I'd stopped taking them months ago. They made me foggy, compliant, forgetful of things I needed to remember. They never asked why I'd grown quieter. They only needed me to perform wellness. Smile at dinner parties, attend the Sorbonne like a dutiful daughter, never mention the things I'd seen and heard. The rest of their energy went to their careers, their affairs, or their elaborate social performances I was required to witness, but never discuss. I can't recall my father ever asking how I felt without immediately prescribing something, or my mother embracing me without whispering warnings about appearances. They always had explanations. Your father knows what's best for your condition, or Maman is protecting you from yourself. Over time, I learned to hide my clarity and stop trusting those who claimed to love me. The only person who ever believed me was my friend Margot Rousseau, who I met at university. She noticed things others missed, how I photographed everything obsessively, how I kept detailed journals hidden in multiple locations, how I'd sometimes repeat conversations verbatim to confirm they'd actually happened. Your parents gaslight you, she said one afternoon at a cafe near the Pantheon. This isn't normal, Amélie. But I'd been conditioned to doubt my own perceptions for so long that even her validation felt uncertain. Everything intensified when I was 22. I'd started remembering things, fragments at first, then whole scenes. Late-night conversations I'd overheard between my parents. The Lausanne solution. Dr. Moreau's special facility. Once she's properly medicated, she'll forget. Phone calls where my father discussed my deteriorating condition with colleagues while I stood perfectly lucid in the next room. Most disturbing were the gaps in my memory that coincided with new prescriptions, weeks that vanished like smoke. I began documenting everything. Voice recordings on my phone, photographs of every pill bottle, videos of myself describing what I'd witnessed. I uploaded everything to cloud servers under fake names, sent copies to email accounts my parents didn't know existed. If I was losing my mind, I wanted evidence. If I wasn't, I wanted proof. The revelation came accidentally. I'd hidden a voice recorder in my father's study to capture one of his phone calls. Instead, I recorded a conversation between my parents that chilled me to my bones. She's remembering too much, my mother said. The medications aren't working anymore. Then we moved to the permanent solution, my father replied. Dr. Moreau has an opening next month. Once she's committed, we'll have full control of her trust fund. Her grandmother's inheritance will finally be ours. And if she resists, who would believe her? We have years of documentation about her instability. Every prescription, every episode, we've created. She's been the perfect patient. I sat in my room, shaking as the truth crystallized. They weren't treating mental illness. They were creating it, documenting symptoms they induced, building a case for institutionalization to access the inheritance my grandmother had left me, money they couldn't touch unless I was declared incompetent. I started planning my disappearance that night. Margot helped, though she was terrified. We opened a bank account under a variation of my name, slowly transferred funds from my savings. I gathered copies of my birth certificate, passport, medical records they didn't know I'd accessed. Most importantly, I stopped taking their pills entirely, hiding them under my tongue and spitting them out later. The clarity that returned was overwhelming. Memories flooded back. Years of manipulation, staged episodes where they'd slipped drugs into my food, conversations they'd convinced me I'd imagined. The depth of their deception was staggering. But I couldn't leave yet. I needed more evidence, something undeniable. The opportunity came during one of their dinner parties. My parents loved to host psychiatrists and art dealers, serving excellent wine and subtle cruelties. They'd given me an extra dose of something that afternoon, watching to ensure I swallowed. I pretended to be sedated, glassy-eyed and compliant. Poor Amelie, my mother sighed to her guests. We've tried everything. Philippe thinks a specialized facility might be our only option. Sometimes, my father added, refilling wine glasses, loving parents must make difficult decisions. Her grandmother's death triggered such severe psychosis. She believes we're trying to steal from her. The guests murmured sympathetically while I sat silent, recording everything on my phone hidden in my lap. Dr. Moreau was there, the man they planned to entrust with my imprisonment. He studied me like a specimen, already calculating pharmaceutical cocktails. The facility in Lausanne is very discreet, he assured my parents. Once committed, patients rarely leave. The Swiss laws are quite favorable for long-term treatment. And her assets? My mother asked delicately. Managed by responsible guardians, naturally. You'd have full fiduciary control. They were negotiating my erasure over canapés, discussing my disappearance like a business transaction. I excused myself, ostensibly for the bathroom, and sent every recording to Margot, my backup email accounts, and a journalist I'd been secretly corresponding with. Then I returned to the party, playing my role one last time. 3 days later, on a rainy Tuesday morning, I vanished. Left my phone on a bridge over the Seine, my wallet in a metro station, my medication bottles artfully arranged on my bed with a note that simply said, I remember everything. My parents would think I'd jumped, another tragic victim of mental illness. The police would search the river, check hospitals, monitor my cards. They'd find nothing because Amélie Dubois had ceased to exist. Marie Leclerc, however, had just rented a small apartment in Belleville, paid 6 months in advance with cash I'd hidden for weeks. I cut and dyed my hair, wore clothes my mother would have deemed working class, learned to move through Paris like a ghost. For 2 weeks, I watched from afar as my disappearance made headlines. Troubled heiress missing. Parents plead for daughter's return. My father gave tearful interviews about my long struggle with paranoid delusions. My mother clutched my photograph, begging me to come home for the help I desperately needed. Then Margot executed our plan. She sent the recordings to Le Monde, complete with documentation I'd gathered, falsified medical records, evidence of the drugs they'd been giving me, financial documents showing their attempts to access my inheritance. The journalist I'd contacted had been investigating Dr. Moreau for years, suspecting him of helping wealthy families dispose of inconvenient relatives. My evidence was the break she needed. The story exploded overnight. Missing heiress exposed parents' plot. Psychiatrist arrested in inheritance scheme. How many others disappeared into Swiss treatment? The recordings were damning, my parents' own voices detailing their plans. Other families came forward, children who'd been similarly treated for opposing their parents' control. Dr. Moreau's facility was raided. 12 patients were found, all supposedly severely mentally ill, all coincidentally heirs to significant fortunes. My parents were arrested at Charles de Gaulle, attempting to flee to Switzerland. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They tried to have me committed, and now they faced prison. Their lawyers claimed the recordings were obtained illegally, that I was too mentally unstable to be credible. But the evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, falsified diagnoses, a clear pattern of fraud. More importantly, I was demonstrably sane. The journalist arranged for independent psychiatric evaluation. 3 separate doctors confirmed what I'd always known. I had no mental illness beyond the trauma of being systematically gaslit by those meant to protect me. I revealed myself after their conviction, walking into the courtroom as they were sentenced. My mother fainted. My father, for the first time in my life, looked genuinely afraid of me. Amélie, he whispered. We only wanted what was best. No, I interrupted. You wanted my money. You wanted control. You wanted me to disappear, so I did. Just not how you planned. They each got 8 years. Dr. Moreau got 12. The other families received justice. I reclaimed my inheritance and used part of it to establish a foundation helping victims of psychiatric abuse. Some called me dramatic for disappearing, for the theatrical reveal. But sometimes drama is the only way to make people see the truth they're determined to ignore. I kept the apartment in Belleville, Preferring its honest shabbiness to the gilded cage of the 16th, Margot remained my closest friend, the one who believed me when no one else would. We often sat by the Seine, watching tourists photograph the beauty of Paris, while I remembered how close I'd come to drowning in its elegance. My parents were released after 5 years for good behavior. They live quietly now in a small apartment in Marseille, their reputations destroyed, their licenses revoked. They send letters sometimes, asking for forgiveness, claiming they've changed.
I don't respond.
Some bridges are meant to stay burned, but I kept the recordings. Every conversation, every piece of evidence, archived and backed up in multiple locations. Because I know the truth about people who rewrite reality, they never really stop trying. They just get better at hiding it. And I learned the hard way that the only person who can save you from a beautiful lie is yourself, armed with an ugly truth and the courage to disappear before they make you vanish forever. I am Amélie Dubois. They called me dramatic, delusional, troubled. They tried to erase me with pills and papers and psychiatric prisons. But I survived by vanishing on my own terms, returning not as their victim, but as their reckoning. Now I help others escape families who weaponize love, who turn homes into hospitals and children into patients. Because sometimes the sanest thing you can do is disappear. And sometimes that's the only way to finally be seen. The foundation I established has helped over 200 people escape similar situations. We provide safe houses, legal resources, and most importantly, validation for those whose reality has been systematically denied. Every person we help is proof that my delusions were prophecy, that behind the elegant facades of certain families lurk motivations so dark they require medical terminology to make them palatable. My story became a cautionary tale whispered in Parisian salons, a reminder that sometimes the real madness is in refusing to see what's right in front of you. Or perhaps behind you, in the form of parents who view their children not as people to love, but as problems to solve, assets to control, inconveniences to medicate into submission. I still live in Paris, but now I see it differently. Every psychiatric office could hide a Dr. Moreau. Every elegant apartment could conceal a family conspiracy. Every missing person could be someone who discovered the truth too late, or just in time. But I also see the survivors. They recognize each other on the street, in cafes, at my foundation's meetings. We share a particular vigilance, a way of documenting everything, of never fully trusting authority figures who claim to know what's best for us. We're the ones who learned that love and harm can wear the same face, speak in the same soothing tones, come wrapped in the same concern. Sometimes I walk past my childhood home, that beautiful Haussmann building with its wrought iron balconies and marble entrance. New people live there now, unaware of the horrors those walls witnessed. They probably think it's the perfect Parisian home, and maybe for them it is. But I know the truth. That beauty can be the most effective prison, that elegance can hide the deepest cruelties, and that sometimes the people who claim to love you most are the ones plotting your disappearance. The only difference between me and the women in Dr. Moreau's facility is that I disappeared first. I chose my own vanishing, and in doing so, I finally appeared as myself, not as the troubled daughter they invented, but as the woman who refused to let them write her ending. They thought I was dramatic. They were right. But drama was the only thing loud enough to drown out their lies, bright enough to illuminate their darkness, powerful enough to break their hold. Sometimes you have to set the stage on fire to show everyone what's been hiding in the wings. Sometimes disappearing is the only way to prove you existed at all.